So Continuum features rising talent from across the country. Along with related programming, the exhibition continues Textile Center's commitment to champion the outstanding contemporary work being done by artists in support of underrepresented communities in the field of fiber art. The range of work and practices unique to each artist addresses myriad ways that textile materials, processes, histories, and traditions continue to be used today to tell stories and share narratives about identities, both individual and community, through the eyes and hands of makers. Today's presentations and discussion focuses on the topic of body and place, continuing from the discussion 3 weeks ago on family and memory. Our moderator once again will be Ivonne Yáñez, who has been coordinating the programs around Continuum for us this summer. Thank you so much, Ivonne. Ivonne is a participant in the exhibition as well. She hails from Mexico City, where she trained and worked in fashion design before coming to Minnesota to complete her MFA at the Minneapolis College of Art and Design. In speaking with the artists prior to organizing today's discussion, Ivonne noted, one's place of origin was consistently an inspiration for the making of work. Placement of the body somehow as an active dynamic of the work in the making as portraiture or materially is important in the metaphysical content of all their work. Knowledge of other practices also informs the relationship of body to the work, mentally, physically, and spiritually. Now for a brief introduction of our artist panelists. We're going to start with Kyu Kim. Kyu Kim is a mixed media artist and fashion designer whose works are constructed of paper receipts, tickets, and other materials collected over the past 15 years since relocating to the United States. All of his materials are sewn together by hand, quite outstanding. His work explores his relationship to the United States, the concept of the American dream, and how individual lives are affected by transitions in global economic structures. Kim has exhibited in museums and galleries throughout the US, and he recently received a 2021 New Jersey Individual Artist Fellowship Award from the New Jersey State Council on the Arts. He currently lives and works in LA. Next is Nicole Thomas. Nicole is an interdisciplinary artist, writer, and teaching artist practicing in Minneapolis, Minnesota. They hold a BFA from the Minneapolis College of Art and Design and have curated and produced exhibitions at citywide artists here in the Twin Cities. Her critical writing and reviews have been published by In Review and Minneapolis Art, MPLS ART. She frequently exhibits in the Twin Cities area and has received a Creative Support for Individuals grant from the Minnesota State Arts Board and an Arts Impact for Individuals grant from the Metropolitan Regional Arts Council. Alonzo earned his MFA in fiber and installations from MCAD here in Minneapolis, a BFA in painting and drawing from the University of Wisconsin-Milwaukee. Their studies included international coursework in Almere, Netherlands, and at Santa Reparata International School of Art in Florence, Italy. He currently lives in Minneapolis, Minnesota, where he teaches at Augsburg University, Minneapolis College of Art and Design, and at Textile Center. We were honored to welcome them for a mini residency during Continuum, where they created a site-based work for the exhibition. And finally, SHENEQUA. SHENEQUA received her Master's of Design in Fashion, Body, and Garment at the School of the Art Institute of Chicago under the mentorship of Nick Cave. Solo exhibitions include Still Here at High Noon Gallery in New York City and Woven Narratives at Haw Contemporary in Kansas City, Missouri in 2019. Recent group exhibitions include Performing Labor at Patricia Suito Gallery in San Francisco and The Space We Grow Into at Woman Made Gallery in Chicago, Illinois. She received a 2014 Wingate Fellowship from the Center for Craft and was the 2017-2018 recipient of the inaugural Young Arts Daniel Arsham Fellowship. SHENEQUA maintains her studio practice in Chicago. Before SHENEQUA leads off with her presentation, which will, like I said before, connect the theme of family and memory, which was the prior conversation, with this conversation about body and place, please be sure that you are muted. And I would ask everyone who has a question to please feel free to use the chat during the presentations to generate questions for the artists, which we will integrate into the conversation at the end. So with that said, thank you all so much for joining us. Artists, thank you so much for preparing your presentations and being with us today. And SHENEQUA, take it away.
Well, good afternoon, everyone. My name is SHENEQUA, and I'm going to talk with you all about the role family, memory, body, and place play in my work. Thank you, Tracy Crum, for thinking of me to be a part of Continuum. I'm so excited to be here with you all, especially from the Caribbean. I'm currently in St. Martin, the West Indies. So I'm coming to you all from the tropical place. This image before you, I was invited in the fall of 2020 by Jared Lynch, director and owner of High Noon Gallery in the Lower East Side of New York, to do a solo exhibition in his space from September 9th through October 17th, 2021. So this is an installation shot of the solo exhibition titled Still Here, which references perseverance, but also delves specifically into the stages of grief, which also perseveres, and which is a constant condition of being a Black woman in America. Tracing the structural system of the tapestries, I invite you, the viewer, through a non-linear patchwork of memory, as well as its limitations. More than autobiographical, the memories are also part of a system that I share with Black women. The color palette in Still Here is dominated by Blacks and earth tones, punctuated by strands of red, blue, and purple. The primary colors representing anger and depression, with the secondary color representing bargaining. Long Swoop Black is a decorative, seductive, and menacing, referencing a mixed vocabulary of tribal adornments. A crown of red and blue emerges from the center, playing the role of self-portrait and paying homage to the Chicago-based hairstylist, Derica Crum, who does my hair in Chicago. She designs my crown, and I take inspiration from her all the time. The use of synthetic braiding hair and high quality blends in conversation with the more kinky puff hair speaks to the Black hair salon and my upbringing around what's good and bad hair. So the different material before you operates sort of like a push and pull between the positive and negative space. Motherland Drip is a piece that commemorates actor Chadwick Boseman's death. When he passed away from colon cancer in 2020, it was such a difficult time in our society with the uprise of the pandemic, but I also took it a lot harder than I thought and felt a sudden sadness of the roles that he played in his acting career. So before you could see on your right a detailed shot of the words Wakanda Forever, taken from his leading role T'Challa in the Black Panther. My family's cultural background, conversations with others, and Ghanaian experience influenced my art practice. My art is born from a traditional craft of weaving and transitions into sculpture, performance, textile, and installation. In 2021, I was invited by 108 Contemporary to have a solo exhibition in Tulsa, Oklahoma. So I welcome you now to join me a part of a virtual tour of my solo exhibition titled Wove, which is essentially a trajectory of why, how, and where I wove. And it was on view from April 1st to May 22nd. So due to time, I'm gonna stop there, but you can check out the entire video. It's pretty lengthy of the tour on my website, which I'll give to you at the end of this slideshow. So over the years, weaving the stories shared with family and friends, one thread at a time, expanded and became bigger than myself. So the conversation starts with me and continues with the viewer who engages with the work. So Wove encapsulates the moments, experiences, conversations, writings, and traveling I have with others. Currently, I'm working on a new project called My Family, The Beginning. It will be a series of custom woven image-based art pieces that shines a light on my Caribbean roots. This will take about 3 to 4 years, I'm projecting, who knows, to make and showcase family members on my mom and dad's side, including extended family I inherited along the way. I'm currently in St. Martin, as I said in the beginning, West Indies, visiting my grandmother on my dad's side and doing research that will inform the next steps of this project. I plan to have a minimum of 100 pieces that will hopefully be a traveling exhibition starting off in the Caribbean, and then we'll go to the US and locations where my family resides. So thank you. Again, my name is SHENEQUA, and you can check more of my work on my website at shenequaabrooks.com. You can follow me on Instagram at SHENEQUA, SHE_NE_QUA. Feel free to also follow me on Facebook, SHENEQUA, and feel free to comment or ask me any questions via email at weaveyourdreamsintoreality@gmail.com. And again, all this information in the slide, as well as a lot more, is on my website at shenequaabrooks.com. So thank you.
Thank you,
Thank
SHENEQUA,
you.
for this beautiful presentation, and also the video was amazing. You know, when I was watching this video, and also when, like, since I meet you all guys before meeting you in person, watching all your works, I was thinking about weaving as something that is always connecting people as a community, and also family, history. I don't know if you would like to talk about how do you relate weaving with all these connections. I think as a practice, make like all these connections, like that also many generations are holding this tradition as something that is passing by many generations.
No, definitely. I feel that, as you said, I equate weaving beyond the process and making sort of like fellowship. And it is community, and it brings people together. And I felt like the reason I fell in love with it did derive from my love and passion for Ghanaian textiles. So cloth woven in Ghana, West Africa specifically, draw me to it. But I think once I got into the groove of actually making and producing, along the way, it was sort of brought me closer to my family, because since I moved away from them and moved to the Midwest for over 10 years now, it's sort of like me being closer to them. So my family is very, very much a part and one of the roots in the way I make and why I even make. So that's how I feel weaving was such a great tool to use to communicate that.
We're going to move on to the next presentation. So I think it's great to have a question after each artist. Thank you so much, Ivonne. Screen sharing is up for the next presenter.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining this conversation. I'm so excited to share space with these artists and you. I'm Nicole. I'm an interdisciplinary artist practicing in Minneapolis. I'm joining today from upstate New York, kind of around Lake Erie. So I'll zoom back. As an interdisciplinary artist, I kind of see my practice as someone who uses various techniques and mediums to communicate similar themes and ideas. I'm going to zoom back to 2017 when I created Humanly Possible. It was a way for me to experiment with visitors' bodies within a space. I built kind of a large cushion with a monitor built inside of it that had a colorscape moving slowly across it. And the question that I asked myself while creating it was, how could someone create something that shows technology comforting an individual, and how humanly possible could you, how close can you get to comforting someone using technology without having another person there to help. Next piece I'll show is Reconciled. This piece was made while the pandemic was happening, the uprisings are happening. I was also still really holding on to grief from a family member that had passed away shortly after 2018. So I found that weaving was a really great way to meditate and process memories, and that led me into researching sensory regulation and how the process of making artwork and viewing artwork affects an individual's body and temperament and psychology. That led me into my most recent work, which are 3 series, all with the practice of textile involved. Support network, which is on view right now at the Textile Center, really thinks about the concepts of weaving while also processing memories. So when I say the concept of weaving, I think, and maybe romanticize a lot about how weaving is the technique of stacking various materials on top of each other so tightly that they are supported with each other and built with tension in that support. So I kind of translate that in my mind as various communities that come together and are so tightly knit that they support each other. Sweet Nothings are various small soft sculptures that are meant to be held and appear to be handmade. They're meant to look like something that someone would gift to you, maybe something that would live in your living room or in your bedroom. It explores isolation, and going back to that first sculpture, how can we comfort someone when they're completely alone? I'll play the clip here. So it is a squeezable item that can be held close. The audio did not sound very loud, so I'll just say what it said. It's a recorded message that says, "You might be feeling really lonely right now, but I want you to know that I'm thinking of you." So really delving into the isolation, and during the pandemic, when each of us were very far apart and we were going through cycles of checking in with each other, but also like going through very depressive episodes. So it's just thinking on like what I would give to a family member or a friend in those moments where I don't have capacity to check in, but I just want them to know that I am there still with them, even though I'm not like physically with them. Support system series, I'm showing this one. There are plenty more coming, and there's more on my website as well. While I'm making these sculptures and installations, I think of how can we support ourselves, friends, family, neighbors, or a whole community. And really, I think that these pieces are about how a person can express like self-care while also helping others. So it really just starts from oneself, and then it grows and it affects a whole community.
Thank you. So we can continue with our next artist.
Thank you. Hello, everybody, everyone. I'm very glad to meet you, and I'd like to thank Trace and Yvonne for giving me this wonderful opportunity. My name is Kyu Kim. I'm a fashion designer and a multidisciplinary artist. And I was born and raised in South Korea, and I finished my college and I got a job in Seoul, and I moved to Mexico City, and then I moved to China, and then in 2007 I moved to the US, and I lived in a metropolitan area in New Jersey for 14 years, and last spring I moved to LA, California for my new job. I traveled to some country for my job, and currently I'm a full-time fashion designer for young men's street brand First Row. This is our website. I'm very enjoying creating new collections for every season. So my job is a fashion designer, and I'm creating clothing, very fashionable clothing for young men. That is my main job. And I want to talk about the material for my art. It is very important to me. I have collected all my receipts, tickets, documents, and envelopes from my immigration process after moving to the US in 2007. Each item provides a record of my various activities at a particular place and time. So I think my material is kind of record of my personal history. So you can see the ticket, Empire State Building Observatory. The ticket I visited New York City for the first time in 2003. So I collected all my flight ticket and receipts and museum tickets, yeah, things like that. So yep. Next is one of my works displayed in the current show, Continuum, is the unanswered question, number 2. It is hand-quilted Korean groom's wedding attire. This work is composed of 880 individual receipts collected between 2009 and 2018, mostly in Fort Lee, New Jersey, New York City, and their vicinity. My main inspiration for my art is the Korean traditional craft jogakbo. Some people know about that, the jogakbo. It is a hand-quilted wrapping cloth and made of scraps from hanbok making. Hanbok is Korean traditional clothing. I like the concept of jogakbo. It is recycling, and it is making something special from trivial things. Many people are interested in my medium and my technique, so I want to show the short video about my quilting technique. So it is a very simple technique, just a running stitch, quilt with, cipher, the material, cipher.
Swiffer.
Sweeper.
Swiffer Sweeper. Yes, I recognize it now.
Sweeper. Sorry about my
No,
pronunciation.
awesome.
Yeah. So my material is very, not special, just trivial thing. Yeah. Okay. Next is. So my another artwork is my body is a battleground. It is composed of my previously worn face mask from the COVID-19 pandemic, along with printed image of my face from my expired United States H-1B visa and New Jersey driver's license. The image spanned from 2007 to 2019 when I was living in the US as a temporary immigrant worker before obtaining a green card in November 2019. My self-portrait is a testament to my struggle to live and work in US. It also explores the transitioning paradigm of international labor, the clasp of neoliberalism, and what it means to be American now. The photograph is in my self-portrait portrait both personal and universal. They document a specific time in my life while also investigating how individual lives are affected by transitions in global economic structures. Okay, that's it.
Thank you very much, Don Kyu Kim. Alonso, do you want to go next?
Yes. Great. Yeah. Thank you so much for having me as a resident and then also as part of this panel participant. As previously mentioned, I am Alonzo Pantoja. I use he, they pronouns, and I am physically coming from Minneapolis, Minnesota, where I both live and practice and teach. Before I dive into a bit of my sort of where I'm at and conceptual concerns and all that, I think I always like to start where sort of my thinking is in terms of research. And this is when I was in grad school in MCAD, my second year, when I was beginning to write my thesis, and a professor actually suggested this book by Jose Esteban Munoz, who's a Cuban queer author who unfortunately is no longer with us, but he wrote a few handful books, and this one in particular really stood out to me, and it's called Cruising Utopia. If you know me, I'm sure I've mentioned this at some capacity, so bear with me. One of the things that I thought was really potent or that spoke to me was the first page of the book. And it's this quote here, which reads, "Queerness is not yet here. Queerness is an ideality. Put another way, we are not yet queer. We may never touch queerness, but we can feel it as a warm illumination of a horizon." That to me radicalized the way that I thought about my practice, but also what I was trying to verbalize or even formalize visually with my work. The idea that queerness is so expansive, and to think about it as a metaphor and see it as a horizon, to me spoke so much to me. Also, as a person of Latinx identity, I thought that there was a lot of connection there between this artist or this author and myself. And then the other book that I think sort of speaks to more of the visual work of my practice is this one by Sarah Ahmed. And one of the things that I really liked about the work is that she does a little undoes a little bit of Muniz's work. So I think if you are interested in reading both books, you would have to read Cruising Utopia first, and then this one. And the quote for this one reads, "Orientations shape not only how we inhabit space, but how we apprehend this world of shared inhabitants, as well as who or what we direct our energy and our attention toward." That takes me to my thesis work, which was titled Fields. And this was done in 2020, shortly before the origin of pandemic started, or the beginning of the pandemic. And so this is a 5 weaving installation body of work that was made in my studio. I wanted the work to be site specific, site responsive. And so what I ended up doing was clearing out my entire studio space, painting the walls, scraping the floors. And it was really interesting to see and even walk through the space being so empty. And even though I was there for an entire year, it felt unfamiliar to me. There were a lot of things that I started to notice that I never noticed. For example, this intercom here, I've never noticed that that was there until I cleared out the studio. That I started questioning my reality. I was like, what is happening? This particular piece here is sort of the bridge between the 2 spaces. So this hand weaving was made on a hand loom. So before I arrived to fiber installation, I was a painter. And so a lot of my practice, palette, texture comes from that training. And so I repurposed all of my stretcher bars as hand looms, which are the things that are back here on the wall. And so this piece I made with the intention of keeping it on the loom. I ended up not liking it the way that it was on the loom, so I took it off, and this was the first time that I've ever taken off a loom that was, or excuse me, a tapestry that was on fishing line. So you can see that the nails on the wall here are a little bit staggered, more than usual, because it was trying to readjust the tension and try to make it stay in place without falling apart. My work is also about impermanence. So I like the idea of these rainbows, tapestry sort of being in between us, as a metaphor for queerness, you know, constantly learning, unlearning, being this sort of malleable thing of identity. The other thing that came out of this series was these pieces of wood that I now call markers. And they sort of operate in 2 ways. One, they speak to the rainbow color from the palette. And so they're sort of in communication with the textile yarns, but they also are responding to the space. So this purple here was derived from the purple paint stains that are on the floor. And so I really wanted to acknowledge not only, again, the site specificity of the work and the space, but also to communicate with this rainbow here, or this purple. So that's what those are doing. And they also operate as a placeholder for gathering of bodies. So they're meant to sort of bring people together to these pieces of wood that are freestanding and offer a point of view of the space in the way that I was constantly resting, or where you could see a rainbow in proximity. After I finished grad school, I had my first outdoor exhibition, which was really fun, titled Transient Sites in Minneapolis. And this was a 3-day exhibition that occurred on the backyard of a friend who was at the time doing an alternative viewing space, but with COVID regulations, we couldn't gather indoors, and so we chose to do it outside. A lot of the things that I thought I had answers for in terms of site specificness, site responsiveness within grad school had now shifted, because the work really started to respond in different ways. For instance, having to interact with the critters that were there, all the insects that would be running up on the tapestries, the atmospheric elements. So the other thing that happened was all 3 days, or for every night, it would rain. And so each morning I would have to go back in the morning and fix the threads and adjust them. So it was this sort of tending practice of going back and forth, which I've never had experienced with my practice, such an intimate way of caring for my work. The other thing that I should mention is all of my work undoes itself. So after the work is done exhibiting, I will undo the threads and recycle the threads for a next project. So these images and the body of work that you see are no longer physically present. It's just the photographs are representing the work here. And then this brings me to the work that is at the Textile Center. This window piece that is at the entrance of the Textile Center to the left. And this is by far the largest, tallest weaving that I've woven. So as I mentioned, I weave on fishing line because I like the way that it sort of has this impermanence thing of we don't know if it's starting to be completed or if it's undoing itself. And it also is a challenging way of working because the threads have little friction. And so you can move the weft around up and down. And the location of this was important to me for to be in a way that viewers had to physically orient them yourself to the space. So even though once you are confronted or sort of welcomed by this weaving, once you enter the Textile Center, you physically have to walk around behind it to really acknowledge and take a close-up of all the textures. And so again, it's meant to reorient our bodies, but it's also a metaphor to think about how we reorient our thinking when it comes to queerness and all that. I'm still unsure if this will get undone. It probably will, because I think it's very cyclical. But yeah, so I think that is the last slide. Yeah, so I'll stop sharing there and let Ivonne take it away.
Thank you very much, Alonso. So yeah, I would like to continue this conversation, just talking about that. I noticed that the theme of the body always overlaps with the theme of identity, and I think that is a huge relation with your work. And also, I would like to continue this conversation with some words that I noticed from your art, which is ephemeral. And I think that's another thing that I noticed when you say that you are not using any kind of frames to make this weaving, and also doing this relation of ephemeral and non-boundaries. I think I would like to touch base on that. I think it's very important to mention. Do you have something to add about this?
Is this the question is for me, Yvonne?
Yeah.
Oh, great. Yeah. Yeah, I guess maybe because painting, and this comes from as a former painter who painted for 5 years, is so limiting, or at least the way that I was painting felt very limiting. Um, just like the square, and even the way after once it finished, like you place it on the wall, or at least that's what I was doing. And it felt very 101, where the viewer was sort of coming up to the work. And I started to think about, I guess, orientation, mainly as a person who is a queer, also brown. And so all these identities of, Mexican descent and, growing up bicultural, you're sort of in this in-betweenness of never being like here, but also like never there because I'm not from Mexico. So even like that identity has also like is disorienting for me. And so I wanted to speak about orientation in that way in my practice. So that's when it started coming about, was in grad school too, because I think grad school is really good about breaking you down and then put you back together. So I thought that that was maybe a vulnerable place. And also the Twin Cities was a new place for me. So I also decided just to like really dive into this sort of like full circle moment, and not be committed or confined to like the rigidness of a loom. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we have one comment from Kyu Kim talking about reusing as your practices, like always reusing the thread, something as karma. I think is more refers more that mantra, something that you are repeating again and again and again. Did you want to say that, Kyu Kim?
That he used the same thread again and again. That's right.
Yeah.
So my understanding is that kind of representation of karma, rebirth, and die and rebirth is again and again.
Yes. So the work comes from this sort of idea of being a cycle, in the way that I think about sort of queerness being this thing where you learn how to construct, deconstruct, and then reconstruct, as sort of how you navigate your identity. And so it speaks to more of that. I also think it's meditative for me. I love to weave, and so constructing it and then undoing is very meditative for me. So the physical act of touching tactile things is great for me, which you can do with painting, in my opinion.
Nice.
Cool.
Yeah.
I mean, I like that idea because I'm also I'm using my material for my art is paper receipt. So material is kind of limited. So I use again and again. Like I made an artwork and then destroy that and then use again the material. So I didn't think about that deeply, but that's that kind of interesting to me. Oh yeah, I have.
Yeah. Sorry.
People think the same.
Yeah, I think we're thinking in the same thing. I mean, more about that. All of this iteration of the practices are also inviting to the viewer to meditate about some many things, and like thinking about that as body as a battleground, as your work said. Kyu Kim, I was thinking about your identity and also the way you're navigating the theme, in the way you are experiencing different places. And like I always think when I'm traveling, I'm always thinking as is me, but being in my different representations of myself. So I think also being in a different place every time navigating is you again in different places, being yourself in your different representations. And you are working a lot with memory and all with these saving all these tickets as an archival of all your memories in the different places you have been living. You can recognize sometimes, oh, I remember I bought this when I was feeling in that way, or I remember I bought this when I was feeling sad or happy. Yeah, I would like to know more about this.
About the material.
About the material,
About the memory.
yeah.
So when I create my art with my receipt, so I, when I see my receipt, there's a time and place, what I did, something like that. So all the memories came like constantly. And I think it is kind of very overwhelming experience. Like for the first time, I really enjoyed that. Remember, oh, what time? Oh, that was great. And then things like that. But enjoyed for the first time. But later, it kind of burdened to me. Like it's so intensive. So I'm currently I'm stopped doing using my paper receipt because I wanted to be away from that for a while. So I don't know when I can start again, but currently I'm stopped creating my artwork with receipts.
Absolutely. I would like to connect this with Nicole's work. I think talking about something in the community, psychology, and also I took some notes about your work and your interest of navigating discomfort that is also connecting with these feelings. How do you navigate with this, examining the discomfort or just examining the feelings of people and examining feelings of communities as well as you do with your work?
Yeah, we did talk about comfort and discomfort. And Humanly Possible, I think, was made at a time when I was exploring discomfort and how maybe we feel uncomfortable in many different places, and how can I provide a space for people to feel comfort. So a lot of my work does explore that change that can happen from being uncomfortable and then shifting that into comfort. And I think it's expressed a lot in the work with like color, texture. A lot of my work is very muted and soft. So I hope that viewers feel like they can take a breath. Because when we're feeling discomfort, we hold a lot of things. Did that answer your question?
Yeah, absolutely. And also referring that with SHENEQUA's work that also holds a lot of family. Yesterday I was watching your video with your sisters. They are your sisters, right? And all this familiarity and all this connection between family. I don't know, like being there and just your sisterhood, like just feeling in your place. I think also working with the materials as fiber arts, it becomes a material that we are used to wear, we are used to use since we are like kids. Talking the other day with Alonzo told me something very interesting that I would like to share, that since we tell me if I'm saying this good, Alonso, but you told me about when we are born, we are covered by something, and that something is a soft material. So I think in the terms of SHENEQUA, Nicole, and Alonso working with weaving and soft materials is something that relates with these things that we are used to wear, to feel. And SHENEQUA, do you want to share something about these soft materials, these threads, these connections?
So the work that I shared with you all, and that's in Continuum, are like a hybrid of various materials. I started off with weaving synthetic hair. So hair plays a huge role in my upbringing and in the Black culture, period. I feel. It always goes back to the saying that my grandmothers and my mom would always say about, it doesn't matter how much money you have, you don't have to look like you don't have much. You always have to look proper and put together, regardless. So hair for me was that thread. But then I realized, as far as weaving goes, you can't really weave just with hair. So I had to add another element, which became cotton, Black cotton specifically, which comes to light, and it has so many vast like access from different, like the viewer. But for me, it really boiled down to how it looked and the colors. And it was very much strictly visual and technical to make what I want to make. And I feel like now what I find to be comfort and soft is the experiences and the small experiences that I can recall in my childhood, with me weaving those together with these materials. Now, today, I'm drifting away from hair altogether, which is very fun. With the new body worked strictly about my family, so it is just threads, and me going back to sewing and found objects, so fabrics I've had for years or have acquired through travels, and even down to the point of me visiting my grandmother here in St. Martin, and her doilies, her crocheting, her teaching me how to crochet, being incorporated in these works. So the research has shifted from materiality, and now them sharing their stories with me and understanding, where do I come from? And that's my comfort right now. And discomfort, all wrapped in one, because there's a lot of trauma. So it's like, I'm sifting through a lot of things, speaking to the matriarch of the family, who's revealing secrets and different things that really, as far as place, is sacred space for me. And it's just this huge thing. That's why I'm like 3 to 5 years, who knows? But it's me going deep right now on the research. So I'm currently feeling comfort and discomfort as I'm sifting through that.
That is beautiful. Thanks for sharing all of these, guys. I wonder if we have some public questions for you. We have one here. It's from Bo Ann, and it says, "Hello, I have a question for Kyu Kim. Has your perception and experience as an immigrant artist changed and developed since 2003? And has the time that has passed changed how you view your Korean and American identity, especially in your art?"
Actually, I'm not an American. I'm still Korean. Yeah, actually, I worked in China. I worked in Mexico City, and I feel, I lived in Korea. I never thought about my identity deeply because I'm a Korean, so I don't need to think about my identity. And in China and Mexico City, I feel very comfortable to work, to live. And then I moved to the US, and you know, frankly speaking, I don't feel comfortable. I don't know why exactly, but whenever I need to visit like DMV or embassy, you know, because of my status, I feel uncomfortable. You know, anytime I can be deported, sometimes they can deny my, you know, renew my driver license or visa. So that's why start to create my art with my memory. So I lived like about 15 years in the US. I never thought I could be an artist, some kind of artist. I just a fashion designer for, you know, commercial. And I, you know, I felt some kind of frustrating, some kind of uncomfortable emotion. So I want to speak about that. I want to express that emotion. So that's why I became an artist, because I wanted to speak about my feeling, my experience. Yeah. And I think it is great opportunity to live in the US, because it was my dream. And but in reality, it is kind of different, you know. Reality is kind of tough, and SHENEQUA mentioned about the traumatic. So I like that word, because I think that visiting that DMV or American embassy is kind of traumatic experience to me as a foreigner. Yeah, that is kind of very intensive experience and memory. So yeah.
Yeah,
It is answer to
I think
yay.
so. Yeah, absolutely. And
Yeah.
also, yeah,
Yes,
thinking
thank you. Oh,
about this.
sorry. I just wanted to say yes, it did answer my question. And thank you. I'm also 저도 한국 사람이라서
Okay. Yeah.
so I wanted to ask that question. So
Yeah.
thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, yeah, thinking about this, I think it's very important to mention that you are connecting also with your audience to reflect about these feelings. And also for me, it's traumatic. I think it's like for everyone that is not our current place, our like our home, you know, you're always have this sense of, am I doing something wrong?
Oh
Oh no,
yeah.
yeah, you know. So I think that's beautiful to connect with your audience, that you are like, it's about you at this point, but it's always it's a theme that is also in your viewers and in your audience. And this goes very related with the next questions that we have. It's from Jean-Paul Gallegos, and it's for SHENEQUA. He said, he's asking, I am interested to know about the large bobby pin features that you use in your solo exhibition woven. Installing in the work is usually the last thing I think about. This look liberate and walk throughout. I love them.
Oh, thank you, Jean-Paul. I'm so glad you realized it. So the bobby pins is such a hit with everybody. There came a point in my trajectory of making, which I totally agree with you, that presentation I struggle with of the work. because it does identify not immediately as a tapestry, but then with tapestries, we usually pin it to a wall. We usually have other apparatuses that affiliate with that. So when I was at a point in my making, I was like, okay, I want something different. And I was thinking, and then I was just like, oh my goodness, bobby pins. So for me, I grew up using them, but not very often. So when I came to that realization, okay, how in the world do I do this? Because I'm no fabricator. Trust and believe that ain't for me. So it took a while. I had 6 bobby pins to source from in my personal collection, as well as what I've researched. And it came down to a sketch that I put together where for me, the goal was I did want it to operate as an actual bobby pin. So for it to actually clip on and hold the piece in place. And I did want it to be mounted on the wall, come out a little bit. So thank God for Kara Moulter. She has her own fabrication company that she owns called Dolly Fox Fabrication. She's based in Chicago, Illinois. And at the time she was at the Art Institute with me. And I came across her through Brianna, another good friend of mine, McIntyre, who's a great wood worker. And I went to her with the sketch and I was like, do you know how to make this a reality for me? And she was like, well, I never done this before, but I'll make it happen. And she did just that. It was a lot of work put into it because the tension was just not there. And it's so funny because the tension will really not be there. It's made out of metal. And she gave me some pointers and history on how it was made. And I was like, you know what? Don't even stress about it, girl. And it still hung on it with actual bobby pins. So it still plays a role in the piece. But, you know, I just wanted something intentional that adds and elevates, sort of like, you know, a cherry on top, not too much, not too distracting from the work, but just enough to do what it needs to do, which would be the framing of the work. So thank you for realizing that. I appreciate that question.
Yeah, I just love that the way, and also don't you, Kim, tell this before about the little details that make the difference, like huge difference in some way. So I think this like bobby pins is something that we use, like, I mean, every day I'm using bobby pins. And I think also talking about this shape that never changed like too many long ago, like it's always the same shape. But it's part of your work and it becomes in another thing, in an important thing, in the main thing. So I think that is very interesting. Also, as the tickets, like everybody is like, nobody noticed the tickets, but when is a complete art piece, we're knowing like more about your story, knowing more about you and connecting with others. I think that is beautiful. We have another question. Do any of the artists is from Jill Barb, and he's asking, do any of the artists secretly hide things about yourselves, bodies, identity, experiences, skeletons in your work without ever expressing or explaining that part of your work? Thanks.
Yes, I have. Gail, I feel that I'm very big on spirituality. So in the process of me making, it's very intuitive and I'm informed through my ancestors and through the work itself, that whatever I'm going through, like there's moments that I'm literally crying as I'm weaving. There's moments that the music I'm playing specifically lends to what I need to bring in the work. And it's all there that I do not share with others about the work. So spiritually and what I'm actually in the process of weaving, I feel it's a culmination of my identity, my experiences, the things I hide and I'm going to the grave with, is definitely embedded in each piece that
Yeah.
I do the same. I do put a lot of emotional work into my pieces. For me, weaving is very meditative, and I often reflect on memories, whether they be recent or from childhood or wherever in my life, or from other people in my life. I'm processing it. I'm playing music that evokes various emotions. I'm choosing materials specifically to work through feelings that I have. And yeah, I hope that also that the piece evokes emotions within the viewer and the space. And maybe they can connect in some way to the materials, whether it bring out memories for them. And then in a way, we're connecting our memories by looking at the work.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the most interesting part about fiber arts is that always is tactile, and it always connect with the feelings of the people that is expecting that work. So also working like in my practice, I moved again. I studied fashion design, but then when I started the MFA, I started working with watercolor paintings. And after that, I just decided to move again to fiber arts because it was the only medium I could explore more sensibility and also more texture, more than I used to work with the watercolor paintings. I think every time you are working with your hands, more like interacting with the material and the soft stuff, is more a relation as an spirituality that you are connecting and putting a lot of energy with your handwork. And I think that that's one of the things that we can say about fiber arts, that is very intimate at some point.
For me, I don't hide anything. As I mentioned, I wanted to speak about myself. I wanted to open my identity, and maybe there's just some connection with big concept, but my material, everybody understand what it is, but I'm trying to find out more deep connection with current system like globalization and neoliberalism, that kind of big idea, but I don't know what it is exactly, but I strongly believe that that system affected my life because I traveled many countries for my work. That was kind of contemporary experience, not 100 years ago, and just specific time. I'm born in 1970s and grew up in the 80s and 90s. That time, that economic system affected my life a lot. So I want to know about more connection, and I tried to want to find out the answer. So if you know something about that, just let me know.
Okay, thank you, Don Kyu Kim. We have Don Kyu Kim. The nature of the thermosensitive paper of all the recipes is not archival. The recipes are fading and they are hidden chemical sensitive. Are you thinking about the work different now as it is changing over the time? The stitching and overlay of papers are all they will be left at some point as the documents fade. Oh, that's true.
Yeah. Yeah, eventually the paper receipt will be fade, like you cannot recognize what it is, but I like that concept because it my artwork like slowly changing like for a long time. Then it will be like blank. I really like that concept because it reminds of my memory, people's memory. Your memory will be faded eventually, and then some, you know, strong memory will be left. And I really like that concept. And I know that that paper will be fade, and then it changing the color also. It fading, and it became more like yellowish, like fade to black, fade to blank.
Yeah. Alonso, I think this is like very related theme. Talking about the ephemeral work, thinking about that you guys like all your practices are changing with the time. And I love the way you say with your last piece installed here in the Textile Center, you said, I don't know if it's finished. I think yes, I think no, could be. I think that is beautiful. Do you want to add something about this?
Yeah. Well, I also just want to comment on briefly on Gail's question. That is a great question. In general, I think that yeah, it could be probed in so many ways. But in terms of ephemeralness, I don't know. I think I'm a very person that likes to just live in the moment, and I think I'm more interested, engaged in the process rather than archive or preserved an object for its objectness. Because for me, it's all about the experience, and I rather learn from it so that I can learn to do something else rather than try to keep something for longer. That's just for me. I will say that I wasn't like that. And so I think maybe it also comes from like the shift between painting to fiber that I'm now sort of like thinking about it in a different way. Yeah, I'm a bit chaotic that way. I'm an Aries.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that. I think, yeah. Alonso, what was the experience like working near an entrance at the Textile Center?
That's a great question.
Yeah, I was just, yeah, that's a great question. So, I mean, the other thing too is teaching it's its own practice. And I think, you know, I graduated in 2020 and I was lucky enough to find teaching work right away. But that also meant that I had to step back in my practice of making. And so this was one of the first projects that I was able to sort of jump back into my practice. So I didn't mind that people were in and out, and there were a lot of curious people wondering what I was doing, and some people were amazed by the fishing line that sort of was just there. It was good because it allowed me to engage in conversation about my practice in ways that I wasn't expecting to. But of course, then there was just like, oh, people would come in and they were trying to not disrupt me, but they were just watching me. And you know how that goes when people watch you, you seem to not know how to do that thing that you've been doing for years. So yeah, that's the other side of that too.
So are you enjoying meeting people? Like,
Yeah, no, I love meeting people. I should say that I'm not, that I am not like, I'm a people person. I
Okay.
love studio visits. I
Mhm.
love to talk about art.
Mhm.
Critique is my favorite thing to do in a classroom. Yes, no, I love to engage with people.
So I'm curious about that ability to, like, you know, like to meet people. It's kind of is kind of you know, as an artist, do you think that it is important to explain your art or meet people? And then I'm not good at meeting people and then explaining my my idea.
Yes, which is why I thought Gail's second half of the question about without ever expressing or explaining, you know, work in general. I personally, I mean, my work formally are rainbows. And whether people can see that, you know, I'm a queer person, a queer artist, to me, it doesn't really matter. Like, I rather have someone engage with the work on any level, whether it's like, oh, the texture of it, the colors of it, or even like question why it's being held that way. And so when I usually engage with people, I usually just try to be as open to the conversation in terms of like any level, whether it's someone who has never taken an art class, or people who are artists, like at any level. I think that something should convey in the work, because I think we as artists, we are having a visual conversation with the work, and I think it's our responsibility to sort of gather the signifiers and, you know, what messages that we're trying to convey to a certain extent. But I also think that we shouldn't be spoon feeding or holding someone's hand through our entire messages, in my opinion.
Wow, I love to close with that. Because because that was one of my questions. Like, what do you think is our responsibility as artists? And I think that's beautiful. If you want to add, like, if you guys want to add something about this, what is our responsibility as artists in this role?
Ooh, that's a great question. I feel my responsibility as an artist is to share my story, to make sure those that look like me, identify as me, are seen, and that everyone has access to my work, which I feel I've accomplished and I continue to accomplish, because it's inevitable. It always will be from a Black woman's perspective. But I think with the story that I'm sharing, everyone can see a bit of something, even if they may not walk the same road I have. So that's what I feel.
Absolutely, yes. Nicole, do you want to add something to this?
Can I clarify? I got a little bit distracted. I'm sorry. What's the question?
Don't worry, it's fine. What do you think is our responsibility as artists?
Yeah, I think for me, how I feel my responsibility is as an artist is, yeah, to communicate me, my life, and then in turn make connections, and whether it be I'm there or not. Yeah, and overall, yes, I really enjoy making comforting spaces for people who look like me, people who don't feel they belong in an art space. I want them to feel like they are welcome there, more than anyone else.
This is beautiful. Okay, well, I think we're two minutes left. So it was a pleasure having this conversation with you guys. I really enjoyed this. I would like to have more and more time and more conversations. I think this turned very interesting. Thank you, Tracy, for all of this space. Do you want to add something?
Well, you are welcome. And I want to thank you, Yvonne, for doing such an awesome job with the panel conversations, the last two conversations. And I'm going to encourage everyone who's interested in sharing out these conversations or checking out the conversation that happened on June 9th, just check on our website in the next couple of weeks. Because they will become part of the public archive of the Continuum program. So Yvonne, thank you so much. It has been absolutely such a pleasure to work with Yvonne this summer. We met at MCAD and Yvonne asked if we took interns, and she was so enthusiastic. She came the next day. And I was like, yes, you are hired. And the conversations that we have been able to have and the things that we've been able to put together very quickly as part of the Continuum exhibit and the programming have been really made possible because of you. And then also thank you to all the artists, because so many of you've all given so much at the last minute and offered me much flexibility and been forgiving of all of our mistakes and all of our last minute needs. And so it's just been a pleasure to work with everybody. So thank you all so much. And with that, we will adjourn. And thanks to the audience for joining us today. And please, the show is up until the 9th of July. And we will be putting together a digital catalog of the exhibition and the programming over the next couple of months. So watch for that as well. So thank you. And please, everybody, take care and have a great weekend, safe weekend ahead. Okay.
Thank you. Bye-bye.